Hello and welcome back to Gospel First. I'm your host, Joe Cirillo, and I'm truly glad that you're here today. As we close this week, remember the goal isn't to finish a plan, it's to follow a person. 10 minutes a day with Jesus at the center forms a steadier kind of faith. Today we're in Mark chapter 16, the resurrection chapter, and Mark tells it in a way that feels human: awe, fear, trembling, and hope all together. And the message is simple and powerful. Jesus is not only alive, he is already ahead of you. So if you feel unsure about your next step, or if your faith feels shaky, or if you're trying to begin again, today is for you. So let's begin. Love comes back to the tomb in Mark chapter 16, verses 1 to 4. Very early in the morning, in verse 1 and 2, when the Sabbath was past, they came unto the sepulchre. Now these women are not expecting the resurrection. They come to finish the burial rites. In verse 3, they ask one another, who shall roll away the stone? Then Mark tells us in verse 4, when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away. God often removes obstacles we are still worrying about. What's the principle? God is already at work ahead of our fears. Next, in Mark chapter 16, verses 5 to 7, he is risen. Inside the tomb, they see a young man clothed in white. He says in verse 6, be not affrighted. Then words that change everything. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth. He is risen. He is not here. And then comes a tender instruction in verse 7. Go your way and tell his disciples. And Peter, the one who denied him, the one who failed him, the one who failed publicly, grace names him specifically. Then the promise comes in verse 7. He goeth before you into Galilee. Jesus is already moving forward. So here's the principle. Resurrection and grace goes looking for those who think that they're disqualified. Next in verses 8, fear and silence. Mark ends the scene honestly. They went out quickly, for they trembled and were amazed in verse 8. Fear and joy coexist. Faith does not erase trembling, it walks through it. This is not a failure of faith, it is the birth of awe. Something to think about. Where does fear still mix with my hope? Do I allow God to work even when I feel unsure? Next, in Mark 16, verses 9 to 11, Jesus appears to the brokenhearted. Jesus appears first to the Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils, in verse 9. He chooses someone with a painful past to carry resurrection news. She tells the disciples they believe not, in verse 11. Resurrection is hard to accept when grief has settled in. Now, Jesus does not rebuke Mary. He continues appearing. Now, here's the principle. Jesus entrusts the hope of the resurrection to those who know what healing feels like. Next, in verses 12 to 14, slow hearts, patient Savior. Jesus appears to others. Again, neither believeth they them, in verse 13. Finally, he appears to the 11. He upbraided them with their unbelief and hardness of heart, verse 14. But notice, he still shows up. Doubt does not cancel relationship. Jesus meets them where they are. Next, in Mark chapter 16, verses 15, go ye into all the world. Then Jesus gives a commission in verse 15. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Not to the perfect, not to the fearless, but to the ones who ran, doubted, and failed. Hope of the resurrection turns forgiven people into witnesses. What's the principle? The mission of Christ flows from grace, not qualification. Next, in verse 19 to 20, the Lord works with them. Mark closes with quiet confidence in verse 20. The Lord working with them. Not watching from a distance, not waiting for perfection, working with them. This is how the Gospel of Mark closes. Not with closure, but with movement. So in closing, think about this. Mark ends where faith begins, with an empty tomb, with trembling hearts, with grace that names Peter, with Jesus already ahead of us. If today you feel unsure or unready, or still carrying fear, remember this. Jesus is not behind you, disappointed. He's not waiting for you to catch up. He goes before you into your next step, into your healing, into your calling, and he still works with you. Well, you made it through another week. So thank you for staying faithful to the journey. May the Spirit continue to fill your heart and draw you closer to Jesus Christ. If your heart feels even a gentle nudge, I once again invite you to subscribe and share so that we can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ together. And I'll see you next week as we continue to study the New Testament through the eyes of Luke. Until then, God bless.